webinar regards the migration to SharePoint Online from SharePoint on-premise. If you don't mind, we will give 2 more minutes other participants to join us because we see that other people joining at the same time. So please give us 2 more minutes just to other people to join us, and we will immediately start to present how we can or how you can prepare to migrate your data or your applications to SharePoint Online, hosted in Office 365 from SharePoint on-premise. Give us just 1 minute and we will start immediately. During the presentation, we will show you exactly what are the key elements you should prepare before the migration should start or should start it to be done in your company, in your environment. And yep, let me just try it. Yep. Any new changes? Okay, perfect. We get back to the sound. So again, I want to welcome everyone on the first webinar organized by Office 365 Competency Center about the migration to Office 365 from SharePoint on-premise, especially to SharePoint Online. We will focus on 4 key areas related with how to prepare proper way to be sure that we will be able to successfully manage the migration. The whole webinar will be recorded, will be shared with you after the meeting. You will also get possibility to register for external workshop that we can support you from perspective of managing or analyzing your data, how the migration should work proper way. At the same time, during the webinar, you are able to share any questions with us. We will try to answer them after every section during our presentation. So we will raise the questions and try to help you to address them. We'll stop that for a few seconds. Just please write these questions in English. Yeah, so I believe we get everyone who wants to join us. So getting slowly starting. My name is Szymon Bochniak. I'm working as an Office 365 Service Delivery Manager in SII. I'm working with SharePoint technology for 12 plus years, and currently I'm managing 30 plus people who supports daily adoption, migration to Office 365, especially to the collaboration applications like SharePoint, like OneDrive, Teams, Flow, Power Apps. My daily work is to help our clients to move the data to Office 365, to move from SharePoint on-premise to SharePoint Online. And one of the elements to do that is to transfer our knowledge to our clients, like on this webinar, when we will talk about what is possible, what's not, what is key elements that you have to think about when you're thinking about them moving to Office 365. You can also find me on my blog, office365atwork.com, when I'm talking more about adoption of Office 365, how to use existing out-of-the-box tools to make your business users' life easier. You can also follow me on LinkedIn when I'm publishing and sharing the knowledge about Office 365 technology in general. During our webinar, we will focus in four main areas. So first, I would try to help you to answer the question, why at all we're trying to move to Office 365? What are the main reasons that companies decide to move to cloud? What are the goals that these companies want to achieve? And again, at the same time, what are the challenges related with that? So, um, what are the sources of whole idea to move our SharePoint on-premise data to Office 365? At second step, we will talk more about, okay, we're moving to cloud. We know that we want to get rid of SharePoint on-premise. What are the technical challenges that we met? So what are possible problems that we should or we could met during that kind of projects? How we can um, help to resolve them? And what are the best practice that we should think at the planning stage before the real migration will start? From perspective of third section of our webinar, we'll focus about the business engagement and business related challenges during such project. I will repeat that a lot, but our idea behind that kind of projects is to focus very strongly on business, because business users, business owners in most cases are key element, key factor for success of such project. So we will talk more about that. And in the final stage, we will also sum up all elements related with how to proceed, what are the key elements we should focus on when we will planning, when we will preparing to the migration to SharePoint Online, to Office 365 in general. First element that I want to start from is why at all we migrating to Office 365. What are the reasons behind that kind of decisions, and why organizations decide to move from SharePoint on-premise to SharePoint Online? And the reason behind it is, when you will think about that, you will see that there are few elements that maybe not force but push companies to do that. So uh, and you can see that they are very technical. So companies very strongly focus on technology when they're thinking about moving to Office 365. One of the most important, most common reasons why companies moving to cloud, we want to get rid of Exchange on premise. So this is quite huge cost risk element in every IT organizations. And first data, which in most cases is, of course, from my perspective, from my experience, or in general, uh, are chosen to be migrated. First technology, first platform which is chosen to be migrated to cloud is Exchange. So we're moving our emails from Exchange on premise, Exchange servers, to Office 365 to get rid of Exchange servers. Mm, and that's the reason why the Office 365 could be executed in many companies. And sometimes we're meeting the situation that Office 365 is used just for that. So we're moving every email box to cloud, and this is the first reason to move to Office 365. Second possible scenario is general strategy. So we're moving everything to cloud because we want to get rid of SharePoint on-premise, Exchange on-premise, Skype on-premise, general servers. We're trying to go to cloud. This is our company strategy. So C-level decision, we're moving to cloud. We have partnerships, agreements with Microsoft or other companies, which also have strategy to go to cloud first solutions. So you can see there's no much business justification here. And third element, and the new features. So uh, we have still SharePoint on premise, but all new features coming to SharePoint Online. And this is the fact that SharePoint servers are supported, will be supported, will be getting new features. The roadmap for them will be presented. But when you see the difference, cloud power is much bigger than on-premise power currently. So all new modern features or integrations or new elements that Microsoft presenting is cloud first. So if if you strongly heavily use the SharePoint on premise, you want to utilize it more. Probably using Office 365 could be good reason to get more from this platform. And the last but not least reason is SharePoint as a legacy platform. So Microsoft officially says today, if you are on SharePoint 2013, 2010, 2007, you are on the legacy system. So this is something that will get, or sorry, none of these platforms are still supported. So again, this could be the possible risk for every organization, and almost every company has the strategy to move on from that platforms. And again, we have two scenarios: move to most common, most often SharePoint versions like SharePoint Server 2019, or move the data to cloud. So these are the possible options. If you are on the old versions of SharePoint, none of them are supported still. Only SharePoint 2013 could have extended support in place if you buy this. If your organization does not have that in contract, your SharePoint platform is not supported. So when you were thinking in summary, what are these two regions of topics that move companies from SharePoint on-premise or general on-premise platforms to cloud? There are two factors. On the one hand, we have costs. So want to get rid of license costs based on our cloud-first strategy. We want to get rid of infrastructure, backups, support, maintenance, administration tasks, or any kind of topics that are related with making our SharePoint on-premise to work, or Exchange to work proper way. Risks. So this is the second factor. Um, and here we have three elements we listed. There are more topics like that, but still, first, which I already mentioned, we are on the unsupported SharePoint version like 2007, 2010, 2013, and we want to get rid of legacy system like that. So how to do that? One of the options is move everything to cloud, turn off the servers, problem solved. But we have also few more. One, sometimes it's difficult to find SharePoint expertise in our organization, to find SharePoint experts, SharePoint employees, engineers who can support uh, projects, support our business, support the maintenance of the solutions. And it's very difficult to maintain systems like that. So if we will move or push a little of that part to Microsoft when we will host our SharePoint on Office 365, this reduces that kind of risk. And the last topic we want to mention here, lack of usage. So uh, it happened that companies have SharePoint deployed internally, storing their documents, not much business applications, not much critical applications there, but still there is something which we hosting on SharePoint, and we have to do something with that. If again we are not fully confident about support for our platform, about experience in our team, solution to reduce that risk could be to move everything to cloud. And when you're thinking about all these elements I listed here, there's no business side at all. So all that kind of elements are strongly related with risk management, cost management, general company strategy about moving applications to cloud. We don't have much relations, much justifications related with business owners of the data or applications or business users. And this could be very big challenge from perspective of such project, because in the end, this will be the people who will work with you when you will migrating to Office 365. This will be the people who will challenge you if something will not work, but that was not their idea to do that. And that's why we're listing that, and this will be repeated a few times during our webinar, that focus on that business part, or maybe managing lack of business engagement in such project is very important. It's key decision to engage business users, because the decision is not coming from them, but they can be harmed by that. So it's very important to have such idea what what is the what is the to have understanding why we at all starting discussion about migrating to Office 365. And when you're thinking about that, again, we have costs, risks related with legacy systems, probably new technologies, but we totally not have business side engaged to that project. And it's really good to have that understanding at the very beginning to plan very first steps proper way. In second and third section of our webinar, we will talk more about technical challenges and also business related challenges related with the project. So getting understanding that we are able to force based on some kind of policies about strategy, about costs, risk management to do that is not always that something that business looks for. And what I want to remind you, if you have any questions or you want to raise up any topic during our presentation, feel free to put your question in chat window. My colleague Violeta, who is with me on this webinar, on after every section will rise up the topics. Currently, I see that we don't have any new questions rise up by participants of this webinar. But again, if you want to ask about something, feel free to put question in chat window. We will get to your question after next session. And the first thing which is quite important. So we know that business is maybe not strongly engaged in the process. So this is the fact in most cases. This is decision mostly came from high level management or IT. Uh, so what we can do to prepare better to manage the project proper way at the very first stage. And in general, what are the technical challenges related with the migration when we starting to prepare for it? First topic which happened in most common organizations is generally we have no idea what we have on SharePoint. So we cannot tell what kind of data, where, in what volume is stored on SharePoint. So we know it could be big. We know that we have sometimes terabytes of data, sometimes hundreds of gigabytes of data stored on SharePoint, but we don't have strong understanding how many data, how it is split, how this is organized. Is this something that will impact us at all? Maybe sometimes where it is stored, or we get SharePoint farm after somebody, and we don't have this knowledge at all. So if we want to plan to migrate to SharePoint Online, the first thing we have to do is to get better understanding what kind of SharePoint we have. So what version, how much data, how the data is organized. So these are the things that we have to start from. So before we will do any planning, before we will do any workload estimation, the first thing we have to do is to have better understanding what we are talking about. So if we're talking about the migration of 5 gigabytes of data, or we're talking about the migration of 5 terabytes of data, do we have business applications stored on our SharePoint on-premise, or this is just document management system, nothing more? And you can assume, as a general assumption, that this kind of knowledge could be not existing in the organization. I would say that in 90% of projects we're working with our clients, general understanding of SharePoint is not very high. And this is not, I don't know, some kind of disadvantage or the wrong management of the system. It is general way how SharePoint lives in the organization. So this is the platform, most cases heavily used by business, extended by business, managed by business. So in longer term, it's extremely difficult to monitor proper way what's going on there. And again, SharePoint in many cases is not highly critical system for organizations. So we can assume there could be something, but we cannot be sure for 100% what is still there. And what we can recommend in such case. So how to start from perspective of using um, SharePoint or analyzing the SharePoint before we will start any kind of migration, before we will start any kind of planning what to do. So I want to recommend you two free tools which are totally open, maybe not open. They are you don't have to bot them. They are possibly to be downloaded just from the internet or from the Microsoft site that you can use to analyze your SharePoint farm. And this is the first step we recommend for every client. This is also first step we doing when we helping to analyze somebody's environment is to analyze what is stored there, what kind of data is stored there, to limit the risk of super complex environment or super complex elements, or maybe this could be very good solutions to do the cleanup, which is always a good thing to be done. And first tool I want to recommend for you is SharePoint Farm Report. It is old complex Codeplex solution which is provided for free, currently hosted on GitHub, which you can download, execute on your SharePoint farm, and this will give you very strong understanding about your farm in general on the high level. Impact of executing that tool is very low, so you will not harm your farm when you will execute that. You can do that immediately. You will get the results in 1-2 seconds. It's to have what kind of permissions you need to have to execute that. In general, you have to be SQL Server DB owner for the SharePoint configuration database. The tool reads that and publish that to the nice report that shows exactly what kind of farm you have, how many servers, what kind of services are deployed on your SharePoint environment, which build version is deployed, what kind of custom solutions you have, what kind of content database you have, and what size they are. Uh, this tool is also very useful in case you will plan to migrate to newer version of SharePoint on premise. So if you will plan to move from SharePoint 2010, 2013 to SharePoint 19, you can also use that tool to analyze what complexity of your SharePoint farm is. The tool is free. It works for SharePoint 2007, 2010, 2013. Low impact on your platform, give you high level information about your farm, about services executed there, custom solutions, and content database size. Mm, From perspective of second tool I want to recommend for you is SharePoint Migration Assessment Tool. This is the tool provided by Microsoft for free. It is extremely complex tool which gives you extremely detailed information about what your SharePoint farm owns, what is stored on your SharePoint environment. Examples, you can see some screenshots we did share here. It shows you exactly how many site collections you have, every site collection size, complexity of subsites, all not supported or tricky scenarios. This is a really good thing that when you will execute that tool on your SharePoint farm, you will get very detailed reports that shows every data you have there, every custom solution, every business application, every tricky to be migrated part of your SharePoint. The tool is regularly updated by Microsoft, contains reports that shows all difficult elements in case of migration. What you can see two screenshots here. First screenshot shows in general uh, how many sites are affected by things like high level number of versions, how high level of huge lists or huge libraries, info platforms, SharePoint workflows, large list views, alerts, checkout files, and more and more. As you can see, performance impact on farm is quite high. So we get the results from this tool that could have about 300 megabytes of just of Excel reports that detailed list every component on your farm that could harm your migration project. This extremely good tool, highly recommended to be executed on your farm, probably during maintenance window, that will tell you exactly what you have there and will be strong foundation for your further steps. So how to categorize the structure, how to plan next steps, what we exactly have there, how many data we have there. The challenges, it supports only SharePoint 2010, SharePoint 2013. As I said, it have really high impact on your SharePoint environment. It will generate a lot of data, a lot of files, a lot of reports, which will be very useful, but could have some volume of the data there. Plus, it will impact the performance of your SharePoint farm. To execute the reports, you need to have SQL Server sysadmin rights on SQL, plus SharePoint file administration rights. In some cases, if you have mismatch permissions on your SharePoint farm, it's good to use SharePoint farm account to execute the tool. But in most cases, these two permissions should be totally enough. It is free tool provided by Microsoft. It gives really good, really detailed information about your environment. Very first step to be considered if you plan to migrate to Office 365. Short comment from perspective how we work when we providing that kind of services to our clients. The first thing is we need to execute that tool. We getting these hundreds of reports and we building the proposal based on that. We building detailed analysis what kind of artifacts you have on your SharePoint farm that could make your migration more challenging. And I recommend highly to do the same thing on your site. When you will retrieve all that data, so when you will use SharePoint Farm Report plus SharePoint Migration Assessment tool to analyze what you have, and the biggest benefit of these tools, they are fully automated. So you don't have to go through business to analyze that. You don't have to spend hundreds of hours with your IT administration team. You can just to have enough permissions, execute the tools, and analyze the data provided by the tools. And based on that, so we're getting the results. We're getting the information, what we exactly have there. So what we should do next. First of all, you should focus on most challenging, the most probably difficult elements that could complex increment the complexity of your project. So first of all, large site collections. Large, I meant bigger than 50 gigabytes. Why this volume of the data? In best cases, we assume that we should be able to upload or migrate up to 40 gigabytes of data per day. If you have bigger large site collections, you have to consider mixed scenarios to cover that. If you also don't want to impact on your business side, and you have to plan that proper way, like base migration, then incremental migration to do not impact your business users. And also, it also means that this kind of size of site collection could contain complex solutions, complex business applications, maybe large volume of libraries that have hundreds of thousands of files, large lists and libraries. So when you're moving from SharePoint on-premise to SharePoint Online, you have to remember that recommended number of elements on list or library on SharePoint Online is 5,000. So it's quite low, and you are able to migrate bigger lists and bigger libraries. This is not the problem at all. The challenge is that you will have to do some additional steps to make it work on cloud. So if you will find that kind of lists, if you will find that kind of libraries on your current environment, this is yellow light for you. So warning light about focus on them, see where they are hosted to be sure to cover additional work to make it work after the migration. Problematic elements, so all kind of checkout elements, like if your business will check out some files which happening on every SharePoint farm, you have to check them in, or you have to force business to check them by themselves before you will do the migration. On the other hand, you will have previous version of the files, or file will not be migrated at all if the version number one is checkout. So this is quite important. I also listed here a high number of versions. So if you have document library or list that have version history set up, if you will have the elements with high number of versions, this is something that killing the performance of the migration dramatically. So look for that kind of elements. SharePoint migration assessment to list all libraries, all lists with high number of versions. It's good to review that. It's good to check, do we have such problem or do we have such challenge in our farm before the migration will start. Last topic I want to highlight is customizations and workflows. If we migrating to SharePoint Online, we have master pages, custom code, info platforms, workflows. These are the things that I would say in average, 80% of that components will work, but most of them will require some additional tweaking to start properly work on Office 365. So it's not huge impact to make them work, but if you have 2000 workflows and you have to spend 2 hours of every to make it work, you can see that scale of the migration will grow. So again, it's really good to see and focus on that kind of elements, customize the pages, customize pages, workflows, info platforms. So these are the things that worth to be considered, worth to check before any kind of migration will start. One of the very important things you have to plan when you will do the migration to Office 365 is to choose the target model of the migration. So currently we are at the point that we have two SharePoint platforms existing on Office 365. One is classic SharePoint, so something we know from SharePoint on-premise, exactly one-to-one of copy of SharePoint server mm, with limited number of site templates, with not possibility to execute SharePoint farm customization, but exactly the same platform. And the new platform, modern SharePoint, which is something totally different. You can find out that you can set up the classic SharePoint site in the modern experience. It is not the same to work with SharePoint as you compared it with the modern SharePoint. Modern SharePoint have totally different architecture, have totally different components in place, which does not fit one-to-one with SharePoint on-premise. So if you're planning to migrate SharePoint server on-premise to SharePoint Online Classic, most of cases this will be one-to-one migration. Some components will not be migrated because it's not possible, but in general, you will be able to migrate it one-to-one. If you will try to migrate from SharePoint server on-premise to modern SharePoint Online, it's totally different approach. So you have to do target architecture which will be totally different, map that, plan the features comparison between on-premise and cloud to be sure that it will work. So it's one of the key decisions you have to do at the very beginning. From perspective of what you have to think when you will decide, okay, do we want to consider at all migration to modern SharePoint, is these are these elements. So first of all, we don't have subsites. Very simple thing, but could increase the complexity of your project dramatically. If you have one root site and you have 1,000 subsites, you cannot migrate it one-to-one to modern. You have to create 1,000 separated site collections or do the cleanup and then create 300 of dedicated site collections and map website to modern site collection in cloud. It is challenging. It's challenge you in case of navigation, it challenge you from perspective of permissions, it challenges you from perspective of how to plan target architecture of the solution. Page modernization, it's not possible today. There are scripts on GitHub that helps with that to try to automate the modernization of the pages, which are totally different on modern SharePoint. It works for very simple scenarios. So if you have text, pictures, links, probably you will be able to automate the modernization of the pages. If you have more complex SharePoint sites with more complex pages, this is something that you will have to do probably manually. So again, if you will start to calculate how much additional work you have if you want to migrate to modern, this is the first thing. Forms and workflows. So when we're working on SharePoint on-premise, in most cases we're using SharePoint workflows plus InfoPath. If we consider clean SharePoint without third-party platforms like Nintex. So if we're moving to modern SharePoint, you can also still using InfoPath. You can still using SharePoint Designer workflows, but it's worth to consider, okay, maybe we should migrate it to Microsoft Flow and Power Apps. Our recommendation, Flow enterprise level solution today, you can use that to automate every business process you need. From perspective of Power Apps, and you have very complex InfoPath forms, today it could be challenging to redevelop the application one-to-one from InfoPath to Power Apps. But again, what you can do, you can migrate your InfoPath forms to modern SharePoint, wait a year, and when Power Apps will be on the enterprise level solution, and then redevelop them to Power Apps. But again, as I said, this is redeveloping. There is no option to migrate that. Not supported types of the list. This could be showstopper for you. You have to remember in modern SharePoint, you have two types of the contents, three: pages, custom list, custom library. That's all. So if you're using your SharePoint on-premise, you have there tasks, surveys, picture libraries, calendars, more and more. This is something which is not present in modern. If you want to use surveys, you're using forms on Office 365. If you want to use calendar, you're using Outlook. If you want to use business processes, you're using Microsoft Flow. So again, you can see the architecture of the pieces of SharePoint move from we store everything on SharePoint to the architecture that we have dozens of applications to cover that. So as you can see, migration from SharePoint on-premise to modern could make your project much more complex. And if we will get a step further, so we decide, and I will stop today on the migration from SharePoint server on-premise to SharePoint Classic Online. So if we're moving from SharePoint on-premise to SharePoint Online in Classic mode, what kind of tools we can use? We recommend two. So first, SharePoint Migration Tool and ShareGate Desktop in general. SharePoint Migration Tool, it is free tool that is provided by Microsoft. As you can see on screenshot, the tool does not look very efficient way, but works very well for simple scenarios. So when you will execute the tool, it seems that it's not overpromise about the look and feel, what it can offer for you, but still you can use that to migrate the data to SharePoint Online quite efficient way. It supports most of cases related with out-of-the-box SharePoint. So if you have SharePoint data files, lists, this is something that it will be able to cover. If you have network drive and you want to move the data to SharePoint, it is something that will be possible. You can do the bulk migration, so you can prepare complex Excel file that will map source data to target data. It will cover that. It will cover the permissions. It will cover the general out-of-the-box functionalities. Currently, it officially supports SharePoint 2013. Beta version already supports 2010. We tested that it works smoothly. and it also will support migration to OneDrive. What are the challenge with this tool? If this will not work for some reason, you can do anything with that. We met the situation when client have very simple structure, very simple, I would say, data configuration, and our first choice was to use SharePoint migration tool to do the migration, but for some reason it cannot retrieve the SharePoint farm data. There's no, I would say, detailed log that could help us to analyze that. So you can assume that it's good to test that before you will finally decide to move with this tool, because it could surprise you at some point. Alternative solution for that is ShareGate Desktop, which is new version already appeared. It will also support to migration from SharePoint Classic to Modern. It costs $4,000 per one PC per 1 year. So you can see this is not maybe something extremely expensive, but this is also not cheap scenario. Uh, Previously, in previous licensing model, there were version which was only supports the migration. It costs something about $1,000. This is not something that is present today. Today you have very complex, and this is enterprise level solution. So it gives you possibility to migrate from every SharePoint on-premise version, from additional tools like Box.com, Google Drive, bulk migration from shared drives, to move the data to SharePoint Online. It have very good, very detailed reporting about what you have on your SharePoint on-premise, but you have to build it. So it is additional cost that you have to consider in your project. You can use trial version to test how it works for you. The only challenge is you have to remember that trial version skips some files randomly. So if you will test it, don't be surprised that some files will not be migrated. If you will ask us, okay, which tool we recommend the SharePoint migration tool for the very basic scenarios after testing, ShareGate for complex migrations. There are other tools like Metallogix, but from our experience, it's much slower, and migration for the complex data structure is not such efficient like in ShareGate. When you will prepare to, because we get to analysis of the farm, so we in general know what we have. We choose the migration tool which we want to use to do the migration project to support the technical challenges that we found out during the analysis. What we have to also do to be sure that nothing will surprise us very strongly uh, during the migration planning. So these are some additional tasks which we highly recommend to consider from perspective of preparation to migration in general. So dedicated migration servers, as close as possible to your SharePoint farms, a lot of gigabytes of RAM there, good network connection. Um, Performance test. We highly recommend to do the tests of the migration before you will plan to do the planning, before you will do any kind of final migration. Why is that? First of all, to test how your SharePoint farm feels when you will do hundreds of thousands of operations on your data, how your SQL Server behind the SharePoint behave in such case, how your network works in case when you're pushing hundreds of megabytes or gigabytes of data daily, uh, and to measure the tempo of the migration. So to measure how much data you are able to push to cloud daily. In best cases, we get about 40 gigabytes per day, and this is the results of the network performance, Office 365 tenant performance, and SharePoint servers performance. Um, Not every case worked for us this way. We met the situations that 5 gigabytes was maximum volume of the data we were able to push daily. As you can assume, this is not high number. So SQL tweaking, network tweaking, these are the things that is good to be done before you will start final migration. Choose the migration tools, set them up, configure everything which is required, uh, all access rights, all permissions to cloud or permissions to on-premise to be sure that your migration tool will work. and will not have problem to push the data to cloud. And the last step, when you will have all that information. So what is your speed of the migration? Which data you plan to migrate, which not? I wish you to do the cleanup with your business or with your IT to limit that data, especially if you see that you have some rubbish data from all the years. Um, Based on that, you can prepare the migration. You can prepare the migration plan ahead before you will start it. And this is something that we highly recommend to be done uh, before we will get to the discussion with the business, to engage them, to talk with them, because they need to reserve time for you. And also, you have to plan everything in case of turning off the SharePoint, moving the business from one location to another, and more and more. Yes, so we covered all technical elements we bring as key elements. We're moving smoothly to the business challenges that are also related with the project. I'm checking if we have any question for participants, but I see that there's nothing here, I believe. Or do we have any questions? Nope. Again, if you want to raise any questions, feel free to put that question in the chat window. Then after every section, we'll stop for a second to cover that. Or if you want to, if you will have that question, just anytime you can raise them, we will get back to them. As you can see, we're getting on the some level of details about all these topics. And if you were working with SharePoint, you're feeling that there's still much more in the background. And so we cover that part related with technology, with technical challenges that could happen or could be addressed by you before you will start the migration. One of the elements we're pushing strongly in such project is also what are the business challenges related with such project. Normally, we're getting a lot of feedback from IT people that they don't feel that way. So they don't feel that business here could be the key factor, but from my perspective, it will be in 99% of such projects, because these will be the people who will work with you to tell you, okay, we are good with the migration. This will be the people who will escalate to high level management that something does not work on SharePoint, or they are totally surprised that you move their data from one platform to another and have no idea how to work with Office 365. And this is something that's happening when you will not take care about your business side, your business users, your business owners who use the SharePoint. And this is not easy topic to be covered by you. Why? Because data or business ownership of SharePoint could be challenging. It's very difficult to clarify, okay, who is the owner of the data? Because sometimes these people does not work at all in company. They left the company sometime. Uh, there's no transition of the ownership. There's no list of the ownership of the data. It's difficult to tell which data is critical and which data is not. It could be challenging if you want to organize it somehow, or if you will totally not have anyone in organization that feel as the owner of SharePoint. It's not extremely common, but it's happening that large part of the data doesn't have clear ownership on SharePoint side. And what we recommend in such case? First of all, nominate business champions. So business champions in 10 to 15 people in the organization who will be your power user of SharePoint and will help you to make decisions about SharePoint platform. It's really good to have that kind of team nominated. If you doesn't plan the migration, do that again on your platform. It will be useful for you to engage business side for using the SharePoint, and also prepare steering committee for the decisions that have to be made. So what to do with the data that there is no ownership, what to do with the data that is not used for years, but it is financial data. Uh, and it's good to do not review that side by side or file by file. It's good to prepare that kind of general assumptions. What do you want to do with the data? Okay, so if the data is not used for 5 years, we archive it for 2 years. If nobody used that, then the backup of data is removed. If we doesn't have ownership of the site, but the site is used, then we moving that data as it is. We just communicate that to the business users that are found there. And these are the kind of general decisions that it's good to plan that. It's good to build the committee that will agree, okay, this is the way we will work with the data. So to do that, you should have IT people there, you should have business champions that will be some kind of representation of your organization, and the migration project team. And based on that kind of, I would say, committee, you can make decisions that normally would be very challenging to tell, because try to get the responses of the business users. Okay, do you own that data? Yes. Do you want to remove that? Of course not. We will leave that data forever. So it will be in general things you will hear from your business side. So especially if this is something question like, can we remove that data? So it's good to prepare some kind of committee, especially for the data with the lack of the ownership, to make general decisions how to proceed with that kind of situation, and to have the business champions on board in the project that will be engaged in the project. Especially if you will thinking about the migration plan. If you will plan the whole migration based on your findings, based on your tests, you need to plan that kind of steps with your business champions. You should use them to prioritize which sites should be migrated in which queue, and also create some kind of communication plan with the business users around the organization. This is the element which we assume is, and we recommend to very strongly focus on that. Communication in such project is the a key element to satisfy business users. And it could happen that after the migration, business users will get less than they have on SharePoint on premise. The user experience will be worst. The look and feel will be worst. The business functionality will be worst. But if you will properly communicate that ahead, it's much easier for business users to accept that. And especially if there's not their decisions to move to cloud, because as we started from the very beginning, this is most cases high level management decision or strategy decisions that we move into cloud. So it's really good to not only plan when we migrating which site using which tool to Office 365, but also to plan, okay, when we will communicate with all business users about the migration, when we will communicate with site owners, site business users that something will change, what kind of channels we'll use, emails, Teams, Skype for Business, posters around organizations. These are the things that worth to consider, because you have to remember every this kind of change project will be some kind of pain for the business users. This is not something that you will be able to change, but you can make their life easier if you will just communicate with them proper way, and a lot. So it's good to sometimes maybe over communicate to be sure that there will be no negative surprises for them, for the business users. It's good to engage business champions to communicate in their teams, to communicate around the organization about what will change, why it's changing, what will be the benefits, what will be positive impact of the change for the business users. And as I mentioned already, to do that proper way, to have possibility to succeed from perspective of business users, from perspective of satisfaction on business side, you have try to nominate business owners or decisions committee that will decide about what we're doing in which case. Um, you have to book people's time. So if you plan to migrate heavily used financial site to Office 365, you will not do that in the month close process. So if the finance department closing the month in ERP system, they will not have any minute to support you in migration. So you have to do the proper planning, but also you have to book people's time to do the UATs, to give you the feedback, to test things. So that's why have clear plan is so important, and also nomination of the business users and business champions is so important to make it possible. To make possible to book people's time ahead based on your plan that you will agree with your business champions. Nominate business champions. As you can see, their name appear a lot. It's really good to have them on board for the project from day one. So from the very early stage to use them to help you with communication, to adoption with the business users that move from SharePoint on-premise to cloud solutions, to help to use them as your help. And again, I highly recommend to do not use here managers, maybe some technical freaks or geeks around the teams, people that will have time to help you. If you will choose only manager of the departments, you can assume this is something that will not work at all. And communicate a lot. So really focus on your communication with your business users. Put sometimes over communicate with the things. Try to do proper planning for the communication. So this is something that in many cases is totally ignored or limited heavily by IT teams, but we see that proper communication in such projects bring a lot, increase the satisfaction of the business side dramatically. So it's good to have plan, business champions, and communication plan that will be used to navigate business users through such process. We addressed topics related with business champions, with business users and things related how to what kind of challenges are related with that. On the top of the screen, you can also see invitation for the possibility to arrange the workshop with us, with our team, to help you to work with your migration project, to help you to analyze your SharePoint environment and maybe share our expertise, advise you good cases, proper scenarios, or maybe help you to plan the communication with your business users. You will also receive the access to this workshop contact page via email after our webinar. So feel free to register there. We can arrange the workshop and help you to do your Office 365 migration efficient way, and also share our expertise with you. From perspective of final assumptions, so what we have to do to what are the key values, key elements that we want to proceed to succeed in such project. So what you should focus on, uh, learn why you are migrating. So take some time from your high level management, ask them what are the key factors that your company decide to move to Office 365. If this will be something that could have, I would say, negative impact, make it positive for your business users. So if you can always took the information, okay, we currently are on the old version of SharePoint. This is how it is. This is our company situation. We cannot change that by day, but we want to limit that risk. We want to give you the fully supported, up-to-date platform on the Office 365. You can bring that kind of, I would say, from bringing negative information and make it positive for your business users. But you have to know what are the key factors that force your company to move to Office 365. This will improve your communication with your business users. Second key element, analyze your SharePoint data. So get proper understanding what your SharePoint environment owns, what kind of data is there, what kind of complex functionalities, business applications, what are the key risks related with migration. Use SharePoint migration assessment tool, get very detailed reports about what you have there, what is ownership of the data, and how much data we have there. Prepare yourself to migration. So decide which target platform do you want to use, SharePoint Classic or SharePoint Modern. Do you want to consider moving business processes to Flow or Power Apps or not? Which tool of migration you want to use to be sure that it will work for you? So these are the questions that it's also good to have on your mind to address them quite easily on the very early stage to be sure that you will do the whole planning based on them. And the last, but from my perspective, the most important part, do not remind about your business side. So if you have engage your business side, engage your business champions, build the community behind the project, build the community that will help you to make decisions, and also communicate a lot with your business users during the migration. Plan the communication ahead to be sure when somebody will be informed about what, uh, because these are the things that makes that kind of project successful. Mm, yeah, we also see that we have some questions in the background. So again, we almost done with the webinar, but still, if you have some questions, please feel free to raise the questions. Um, as you heard, we focus on few components. So learn about your business, analyze your data, prepare yourself, do the proper planning, and then manage the project in close collaboration with your business side. We have some questions from Mateusz. I have the question regards SharePoint Modern Classic. Is it possible to using the same time SharePoint Modern Classic at the same farm, or is it possible to choose which application should be using Modern and which should using Classic? Okay, so from perspective of this element, we have two situations here. If we're talking about SharePoint on-premise, Modern is present on SharePoint on-premise only on SharePoint 2019. You can decide which web application will be Modern, which Classic. You can have coexistence environment, and this is something that you decide on your SharePoint farm. If you were thinking about SharePoint Online, Office 365, you're making the decision about the mode of SharePoint on the site collection level. So you can create site collections that are modern. At the same time, you can have site collections which are classic. This is a really good question because what you can do in such approach, you can mix the scenario. If you have some simple sites that are not very complex, owns mostly documents, which is very common, then you can decide, okay, let's move it to SharePoint Modern to be sure that we will be able to at least move something to SharePoint Modern, not everything to SharePoint Classic. SharePoint Classic will be supported, will be present on Office 365, but will not get any extensions, will not get any enhancements, will not get new features. So it's if you see the space that maybe not everything, but some part of your data could be migrated to SharePoint Modern, it is a really good approach to try to do that this way. And it is possible. So it is possible to split the data that you have SharePoint Classic and SharePoint Modern at the same time. What are the biggest challenges with the migration to Modern? The biggest challenge regards the migration to modern SharePoint is it's totally different. Uh, if you have simple case that you have the mostly files, it is something that is not a problem in general to migrate to SharePoint Modern, because the changes on the way how pages looks like, the architectures side will not be challenging. So this is not something that will harm you at all. But if you have, I will give you the example from one of our clients who will be helping to analyze the SharePoint farm. Uh, they have one site collection that have 1,100 subsites, not site collection, but subsites. So if we plan to migrate this kind of structure to SharePoint Online, to modern SharePoint Online, we will have to create 1,100 site collections and map every site to separated site collection and map every component on every site to the target components, which should not be one-to-one on the target environment. What does it mean? It will increase the cost of your project. It will increase the workload. It will increase number of work you will have to spend to make it work. It's not something that is not possible at all, that you cannot migrate from classic to modern. It is, but number of work you will have to, volume of work you will have to spend to migrate data to modern will be much bigger. And as I started from, one of the challenges to migrate to Office 365 is reduction of costs. So you can imagine that it could be challenging to convince high-level management to invest sometimes 30% more to get modern. But scenario when we mix cases could works very well to have something on classic and have something on modern. Let me check. Do we have any other questions for our participants? Yep, I think that's all questions that came from on our webinar. So first of all, I want to thank you again for your time and patience to what you want to share. If you will be interested, please feel free to get back to the recorded session that you will receive via email. We will also share with you possibility to book workshop with us to get more details to your business case and help you work with your business cases to help resolve or maybe help you to make some decisions on your side. Thank you very much, and we wishing you great afternoon. And maybe one more comment from my side. If after your workshop, after this webinar, you will have any additional questions, please feel free to use emails from you will get after the workshop. Share the questions with us. We will try to get back to you and help you to address that quite quickly.